Well, let me ask you this, though, Stephen. The dinosaurs were huge.
Right.
The animals now are not.
Right.
It's entirely possible that through genetics, the giants were huge. Earthlings now are not, obviously. What happened in between? I mean, did they leave? Did they die off? I mean, what happened to them?
Well, first of all, obviously the mass extinction, the ancients were very concerned about the cosmic catastrophes that had taken place. Everybody that recorded them, that's why they were so fascinated with the stars. They were worried about, this is my terminology, they were worried about covering their butt because they had experienced and had written down for them so many of what would call extinction-level events or mass extinctions. And, when you get into the Mayan calendar, what are they saying now? I think it's moved up to 2029. I think there are some people now that have just come up with a new date. Have you noticed, too, that 1 minute the United States is stating that, gee, we're not worried about asteroids and stuff, and the next minute the British are making public statements in the European Union that they're going to get their plan to knock it out of orbit using nuclear weapons?
Yeah.
What there is there's doublespeak. Again, in the United States, we live in a matrix, okay? Almost all the information, all the imagery, all the sounds, everything we get are sound bites. But the point is, the rest of the world is amazed that the Americans can be so, and I interview different, when I say talk to them, obviously on email, I get hundreds of emails a day, and people are saying, do you see what's going on? And if you see how people outside the country view us, it makes those of us who are inside screaming at the top of the lungs, wait, there's a whole different world out there than is being portrayed on, the network news. And not to pick on them, but it's the same thing with history. Getting back to your original question, and I haven't forgot it, about war, I believe that we're going to see the genetic altering of human DNA mixed with animal DNA to produce the very giants and monsters. And please, there are already patents like that. Are you aware of that?
War machines you're talking about, life forms that fight.
You got it. And it's fascinating because Bill Joy, one of the founders of Sun Microsystems, although, he wrote a fabulous essay, which is considered one of the best essays of all time, called Why the Future Doesn't Need Us Anymore. And he said with genetic engineering, cloning, and nanotechnology, we're basically facing extinction. That was the bottom line, and I would encourage everyone to read that. They can get it on the search engine, Why the Future Doesn't Need Us Anymore. I think they can get it on my website, too, www.stevequayle.com.
If you were able to get some of the bone marrow out of a giant's bone from the antiquity days, would you see a different genetic makeup as you would see from humans of today?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I can tell you this, there are people that go around and get it. Some people that knew I was writing this book got a hold of me from Ohio, and this will blow your mind. They found, I think they were 9.5-foot giants in some of the burial mounds, The minute they let it be known, guess what? Certain members from the federal government showed up and took the bones. This is what somebody always asks me, where are all the bones? And the point being is that it seems like every time there's a major find like this, somebody comes and grabs them up. I believe the Human Genome Project on the surface has the stated meaning. I believe beyond that, there's a group that's definitely looking, you could call it, for the giant gene. There's human growth factor H, HGF8, that they can introduce into mice and will literally cause the mice to grow to tremendous proportions, makes them stronger, etc. You've got the scientists now telling basically you're not going to die, George, because they can clone you a new body. They can download your entire memories, your entire sensory input, and load it into a new body. And if you want, by getting connected to the right people, you can share their thoughts. In essence, you can have a thought sharing every single experience, whether it's love, hate, anger, orgasm, whatever. And there's actually a British couple that's doing that right now under a British Telecom grant.
I've always thought that that's exactly what they would do with people in mankind. You'd clone them, take their memories right off a chip, download it, and plug it right back in. And whenever the body's ready to age, you'd do it all over again.
It is absolutely astonishing to me that the amount of information that they have on this. They are also supposedly the group behind going out when any of the real artifacts of extreme importance, like giant skeletons and all this stuff, they're the ones that send out their, I guess you'd say, the equivalent of their cleaners, and they go out and get this stuff, and if they can't get it, they've got an agreement with certain, if you will, government agencies with us that go out and do it for them, too. So there's a real desire to suppress it, and so to answer his question, absolutely.
Is the suppression based on Genesis 6, that maybe they don't want any cooperation from that?
Exactly. Plus, it also points to the fact that given the revelation, and not only Genesis, but in Jude, the New Testament talks about it, the point I think they're trying to keep from everyone is its, if you will, the prophetic ramifications. For instance, Jesus says in Matthew 24, just as in the days of Noah, so will it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man, okay? If you understand that the days of Noah were really raunchy and we're going to repeat them, that's probably one of those things you don't want to let known, just like if the third secret of Fatima is talking about the next pope being the AC, the Antichrist, or whatever the third secret of Fatima is. It's obviously of a...
Well, I don't think it's that.
No, I'm just saying that whatever it is that they want to keep it quiet, okay?
Well, maybe, whatever it is. I mean, there have been reports that it's been already announced. I'm not sure that's
no one believes that, George. The fact that it was that there'd be an attempt on the Pope's life. I mean, there are some people out there that have done a marvelous job of tracking it, and again, the point being is that it was never accepted. And I remember when, again, going back to Malachi Martin, the point being is that he did not indicate that it was anything sedate or tame, but rather so perilous and tumultuous that he dare not speak it.
There seems to be a way of trying to cover up some of the things that have occurred in ancient archaeological times. What's the reasoning behind that? Why not simply say, sure, there were giants. We believe this is where they came from. They were genetically altered later on. So be it.
Well, the Rand Corporation gave a report a number of years ago, and basically stated that it was their estimation that mankind was not sophisticated, intelligent, or spiritually capable of dealing with it, okay? Now, are you familiar with that
Yes.
Rand paper?
Well, is that also the one with the Brookings report on
Yes.
if mankind? All right.
Yep.
All right.
Similar, Rand and Brookings both came out with the same one. I think the biggest issue is that it obviously puts everything into a more spiritual context than it just simply a evolutionary, chemically determined context. And I think basically it would upset the status quo, and I think that's why this stuff is all suppressed. But I don't think it's going to stay suppressed. Did you see, for instance, the flying saucer picture that was on the web where the F-16 was encountering it over Maryland? They can't keep a handle on this thing forever, George, and it seems it's interesting to me that, again, call it coincidence, we get the Mel Gibson movie Signs, we get all this different stuff happening, and then bingo, British Columbia has a unique crop circle. They start happening all over the world. You asked me about the pyramids. There are pyramids all over the world. I don't believe the Great Pyramids were built by the pharaohs who claimed them. I believe they were built, thousands and thousands of years prior to the official date. I would say that Graham Hancock has done, and Bouval and John Anthony West have done fabulous jobs. But these guys, they just get clobbered by, quote-unquote, the professional archaeological community.
Well, is it possible that there were giants that lived during that period, and that might explain how some of these huge boulders moved a little quicker?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you've got boulders, for instance, in Tiwanaku that weigh 200 tons, and when they're fitted together, and they're not just straight right angles being fitted together, some of these things are fitted together in some most unusual shapes, and then you get some of the stele, if you will, or the glyphs, the Mayan glyphs, and it shows guys with kind of like a flamethrower on their back, or a laser. It's kind of an interesting thing. You've got Tibetan monks that can move extremely large and dense matter by their writings, and people have observed it. I haven't, but using a thing called harmonic levitation. Obviously, mass and density can be affected by, certain frequencies, and evidently the ancients, and I believe because of the supernatural intelligence that was imparted to them by these, quote, fallen angels, basically mastered a lot of this stuff. So I believe, quite candidly, that Tenochtitlan, Mexico City, all of the great structures of the world were built by the giants. I don't believe that, they were built by just the people who claimed to have built them. And if you look at their original myths, Aztecs, Incas, Mayans, none of them claim to have built the cities that they inhabit.
Well, the one thing that I do not believe, and never will believe, is that they built them with ramps, and they pulled these huge rocks up ramps to the top.
Right, and let me share this, too. Classical archaeology states that everybody stayed kind of in their own backyard. It's called isolation,
yes.
Versus diffusionism. Listen, can you imagine the oar strokes of somebody that was 28 feet tall? I mean, just think about it. Can you imagine the strength of someone that could lift, let's say, 4 or 5 tons? Do you think maybe they could pedal pretty fast, or they could paddle pretty fast? And again, even if you just assumed normal technology, it would be amazing. Then you get into the Vimana, V-I-M-A-N-A, the flying ships of the Mahabharata, the Indian flying ships, and you even get the Hannibal, when was basically there are records of Hannibal encountering flying platforms that battled him, sending him back. So, the point is that are all these guys just stoned out of their mind and drunk? I don't think so. The point is it's amazing to me that people don't understand. Look, until the Rosetta Stone was found, that was basically a stone that enabled scholars to read hieroglyphics because it translated between Greek, the Dodetic script, and hieroglyphics. They had a tough time. And now, I believe the Rosetta Stone, I think that's what my book, Genesis 6 Giants, is. Quite candidly, there's no other book like it. There simply is no other book like it. And I want to share with people that I guarantee them in the 479 pages, if their minds aren't blown and they go, wow, then I failed. But if I have, and I'm able to get them to think and to question, why are these things kept from us, I think it will help people to put history into perspective. And by putting history into perspective, they'll be able to see the future.
You will get some skeptics who say, nah, you're nuts. Not true.
Yep, I know that, and I deal with them all the time, but I say this, look, I've done my homework, and if you want to argue over the history of these things, let's talk about that. But what skeptics typically do, out of either fear, anger, or jealousy, they go into what in Latin is called the argumentum ad hominem, which basically just means attack the writer, attack the man, but you can't really attack the argument because there's too much data. And we see that continuing all the time, and unfortunately, many incredibly gifted and talented men have been destroyed when they come up with anything that is not status quo. And my motto simply is this: the status quo of history is an absolute matrix, and 90% of prehistoric history and ancient history is a lie.
What's your take on Zecharia Sitchin, the author of the 12th Planet and some other related books?
Well, first of all, I've read everything he's written, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I would say this, where Zecharia Sitchin is claiming that the Anunnaki made us, okay, and that Adam was the first test tube child.
Right.
There are guys who are tremendous scholars of the Semitic language. I am not one of them, okay? But there are the guys, and they question a lot of his interpretation. Michael S. Heiser, he's a PhD candidate, Department of Hebrew and Semitic Studies, University of Wisconsin, has basically said, Zecharia, a lot of your investigation is true, but a lot of your word derivations are wrong. And I would say this, it's amazing to me, people they want to throw God out, but they're certainly willing to accept the fact that maybe aliens genetically altered us or created us in the laboratory. Then my question to them is, who created the aliens? So if you get to first cause, when I'm saying this first cause, the, quote, absolute creative brilliance and genius of the universe, I'd say, Zecharia Sitchin's got some great stuff, but I also think that, and I can't agree with him on the Anunnaki. Listen, according to the Sumerian pantheon, the Anunnaki were the 7 judges of hell. They were the children of the god Anu, A-N-U. and they were contemporary with the seven fates or the Pleiades. And you know, it's interesting because you see how if it's the seven judges of hell, and Zechariah Sitchin says those who came from heaven to earth, and Leal was one of the gods of Sumerian. He was the child of An, heaven, and the son of earth. Okay, excuse me, the mother earth, Ki. So you see again this heaven and earth coming together to produce the gods. And listen, if you were a giant with supernatural intelligence, supernatural strength, supernatural wisdom, I think the people who you were ruling over, unless you had to get hungry and ate them all, would pretty much worship you. And I think that's the history of a lot of the demigods, especially of Greek and Roman mythology.